We are learning Mishna Yevamos, Parak Hey, Chapter Hey. We're in the middle of Mishnah Gimel. We started it yesterday. So we'll just quickly read from the beginning of the Mishnah. Nasan get v'asa maimer. In this case, before the previous Mishnah spoke about, all the combinations of the different things that could have happened, starting with maimer. Then the next Mishnah now begins with Nasan get v'asa maimer. If he gave her a get and then did maimer, the kedushin that's done on a Yevama, tzricha get v'chalitza. She needs a get and chalitza. Nasan get ubal. If he gave a get and then he cohabited with her, he did actual yibam, tzricha get v'chalitza. She needs get and chalitza. Nasan get v'chalatz. If he gave her a get and then did chalitza to her, ein acha chalitza klum. There is nothing that follows after chalitza. This is what we read. This is what we did yesterday. So now the part that now we continue. Chalatz. Now we're going to go through the combination of different things, starting when the first thing that he does is chalitza. So here the Mishnah reads, Chalatz, he did chalitza, v'asa maimer, and then he did maimer, the kedushin. That's on Yevama, he did that after the chalitza. Or, after giving the chalitza, nasan get, he gave her a get. Or, after doing the chalitza ubal, he did a be'ila. So the three cases here are, he did chalitza and then maimer, or he did chalitza and then get, or he did chalitza and then he did be'ila, he cohabited with her. The Mishnah doesn't tell us yet, okay, what's the din? But those are the first three cases that we're dealing, the three cases we're dealing with. Now, starting from a different combination. Let's say the first thing he did was Baal. The first thing he did was he cohabited with her. V'asa maimer, and then after that he did maimer. Or after Baal nasan get, he gave her a get. Or after Baal v'chalatz, he did chalitza. The Mishnah concludes, ein achar chalitza klum. There is nothing that follows after chalitza. Now, the point of the Mishnah is like this. The point of the Mishnah is to say, let's go back to the first set of acts that we spoke about. The first set of acts we started with today. He does a chalitza, and then he does maimer. So the point of the Mishnah is, once you do chalitza,
you're through.
You're done. You're finished. Everything's done. All the zika, all the ibn bond is gone. And therefore, if after chalitza you do a kedushin, it's certainly not going to work because so the Mishnah says you do a maimer, it doesn't work. It doesn't mean anything. Now, here is something we spoke about yesterday because it was relevant to the other part of the Mishnah, and that is that the question has to rise that maimer is just an act of kedushin. It's no different than any other kedushin you do to a woman. Just the point is that although the Torah doesn't give kedushin by a yevama, by a woman who falls to yibam, the Chachamim said you should do an act of kedushin before you do yibam. Okay, but in this, but it's a regular act of kedushin. It's not like any. It's not different than any other act, and therefore the question arises. Okay, so he did chalitza to her. Once you do chalitza to your sister-in-law, now let him marry her. She's a lav. It's a prohibition. Okay, but even if she's a prohibition, if you do kedushin on a woman who's prohibited to you only because of a prohibition, does the kedushin work? The answer is it does work. And therefore, why would we say in a case of where she did chalitza and then afterwards he did maimer, why do we say ein chalitza klum? There's nothing after chalitza. Why not? It was a regular kedushin. It's just another kedushin. And kedushin works even on a woman who's prohibited to you because of a prohibition. And therefore, the Bartanura says that it must be that our Mishnah is following the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that we had previously, that a woman who is even just prohibited to you through a prohibition, who is a relative, she's a forbidden relative, Rabbi Akiva says no kedushin takes effects on her. She doesn't have to be an erva. She doesn't have to carry any kind of death punishment. The mere fact that she is a forbidden relative, even just a prohibition, kedushin doesn't work on her. That's why our Mishnah says that if he did a chalitza, then he did a maimer, it's nothing. Halachically, the way we follow, for the opinion that we follow, if he did a chalitza followed by a maimer, it would just be another kedushin, and the kedushin would take effect. He couldn't say married to her, he'd have to give her a get. Okay, so that's the first case. Then the next case was in chalitza, and then he gave her a get. We spoke, for the get, we knew that if you give a get before chalitza, that creates a situation where you can't do yibum anymore. The get was given, rabbinically it's considered like the Yibam bond was weakened, it was somewhat taken off, and therefore you can't do Yibam. You still got to do Chalitza. But in this case, you did the Chalitza first, and then you gave the get. What are you giving a get on? There's nothing there. The Chalitza took off everything, there's nothing there. That's why the Mishnah says, in that case also, after Chalitza is nothing. Ubal. Now let's say he gave her Chalitza, and then he did Be'ila with her. It's nothing. It's nothing. If he would have done it before the Chalitza, it would have been a Yibam. But now the Chalitza was done. There's no more Yibam connection. There's no more Yibam bond, no more Zika. So it's just an act of Be'ila. Doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean anything. So that's what the Mishnah means regarding this set of cases, Ein Achar Chalitza Klum. Now, but then the Mishnah spoke about another case, which was, let's say the first thing that you did in the combination of different acts was Be'ila. The first thing you did was you cohabited with her. Now, if the first thing you do with the Yevama is you cohabit with her, what happens?
That's it.
She's your wife. You did Yibam. It's done. There's no more Zika bond. She's your wife. Full-fledged wife.
There's no ceremony.
Right, exactly. So now, he did a Be'ila, and then he did a Kedushin. It's meaningless.
He did it already.
He's married already.
Yeah.
Meaningless. Nasan get. He married now. Nasan get. Right? He did a Be'ila, she became his wife. Now he gave her a get. Does the get work?
Yeah.
Why not? Right? It's just a regular get.
Yeah.
Regular get. And the truth is, yes, it does work. The fact that the Mishnah brings it in here is because it's bringing in it's following the rest. It's following the pattern in the sense that if you give her the get after Chalitza, of course it works. But it works because she's your wife. There's nothing to do with Yibam. There's no Yibam effect. And then, if let's say v'chalatz, he went ahead and he be'ila, she became his wife, then he did chalitza. Is it going to help? Of course not. Chalitza only works on a yavama, not on your wife. And therefore, now that Mishnah itself doesn't actually end off with the words ein achar be'ila klum. Doesn't say it. It just says achar chalitza klum. But the point is that both when chalitza is the first thing you do, or be'ila is the first thing you do, what happens there is that the Yibam connection is gone. It's done with. And therefore, there are no more Yibam laws that are going to apply to this woman after Chalitza or Be'ila. So what really comes out here after everything is that when the first thing you do was something that was midrabanan, it was rabbinic in nature. The first thing that you did was a mimer, which was a kedushin derabanan, and then you did another act. Or the first thing that you did was a get, which again only helps according to rabbinic law to affect the yavama. According to our law, it does nothing, but midrabanan it does. And then after that, you did a different act. Okay, in those cases, as we learned in the first two sets of acts in the Mishnah, after those things, the other things affect. But once we're talking about the things that the Torah says that you do to a yavama, that completely take off the Yibam, the Zika, the Yibam connection, then already what follows afterwards is going to be meaningless from a point of any kind of Yibam connection. Okay, now the Mishnah concludes. Achas Yavama, Achas lo Yavim Echad. It's the same, meaning everything we said applies to a case of one Yavama, meaning one wife that fell for Yibam, and one Yavim, and one brother. All right, so Reuben was married to Rachel. And Reuben only had Rachel as a wife. Reuben died. Rachel falls to Yibam to Shimon, that one brother, and all our case, and that was all the cases we started off with. There's one Yavim, there's one Yavama, any of the combination of different things to her. But the Mishnah is saying whether it's one Yavama to one Yavim, the Achash Shtei Yavamas Yavim Echad. The same thing is going to apply when you have two women by one Yavim. Meaning the brother had two wives, and both wives fall to one brother. And now that one brother is going to do a combination of different things, one to one and one to the other. All the halachas that we said until now, which was by one Yavim and one Yavama, will apply then too. And the next Mishnayos are going to go now to elaborate those cases.
What kind of a...
One second.
Maybe I lost something.
One second. Right. Let's continue. Yud Beis. V'mekvar avar v'shama lashon hara v'hemen b'liboy. If let's say a person already transgressed, he heard the Lashon Hara and he accepted it. Whether it falls under the category of Ben Adam Lamakim, and you accepted that so and so did something wrong in the sense that he did an avera between Hashem and between man and Hashem, or whether it was something that he did wrong between it falls under the category of Ben Adam Lachaveri, between man and his friend, and either one, somebody said something about the person derogatory from one of these two categories, and you accepted it. Tikunai. How do you rectify it? How do you deal with it? He's got to basically take it upon himself to stop believing it. He's got to basically convince himself. He's got to say it over and over again in his mind. It's not true. I cannot accept this anymore. And as part of tshuva, he has to accept upon himself that he will not accept lashon hara about anybody anymore. And he shall say vidish, confess. And by doing this, he will now rectify any of the prohibitions he may have transgressed by accepting lashon hara. And there could be a number of them, as the Chofetz Chaim writes in his introduction. This is all talking about as long as you didn't say anything to somebody else. Meaning, as long as you haven't taken what you believed and said it to somebody else, this is the tshuva. This is what you do to rectify. Once you already said this over to somebody else, when you pass this on to someone, which means you spoke lashon hara about that person, then already it's going to be different, as he will say later on. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. A Yearboom.